Hello, welcome to my new video. The new Atari 400 Mini has been out now for about a week and a half. In the meantime, people have discovered some tricks that improve the use of the 400 Mini. I have created a list of a number of these, which resulted in these 5 tips. The new Atari 400 Mini isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are some shortcomings. But maybe these tips can ease the pain. I understand some of these tips will undoubtedly be known, but I hope there are a few that might be new to you. So, let's quickly start with tip number 1.
Tip number 1.
This one will probably already be known, but perhaps not by everyone. So, let's cover this one first. Because the 400 Mini does not contain 25 games, but 27 games. 2 additional games are pedal games, which will only become visible by connecting the Atari Classic Joystick of the new Atari VCS. And here we have the Atari Classic Joystick. I connected to the first USB port. I also connected the CX stick to be able to use the other buttons. The games only become visible if the Classic Joystick is connected before the 400 Mini is started. And here we see the first additional game. That's Super Breakout. I used the CX stick to start a game. Now we can control the game with the spinner of the joystick. The other game we get extra is Castle Crisis, a Warlords clone. But what if you don't own the Atari Classic controller? Then there are other options to enable the 2 games. Because if you connect another controller that has an analog stick, the games are also enabled. I have connected the Atari Modern controller, which also has an analog stick. When we start the 400 Mini, we see that the Super Breakout is now visible. You would think that you could control Breakout with the analog stick, but that's not playable. You can play it with the D-pad.
Tip number 2.
Tip 2 is about the CX stick. If you saw my review video, you know there were problems playing Lee with the CX stick. If you move the stick left or right, a down is also detected, this causing Bruce Lee to duck, making the game unplayable. The problem is clearly visible when you connect the stick to a Windows machine and start the game controller tester. If you move the stick a little to the left, things still go well. But if we move the stick all the way to the left, we see down is also being detected. The same problem occurs when we move the stick to the right. The company retrogames says about this, this is not a bug, this is a feature. But that is of course nonsense. Now, there is a workaround by mapping the joystick differently. Unfortunately, we cannot change the mapping of the built-in games, but we can change the mapping of the games that we load from a USB stick. So I downloaded the original Bruce Lee and placed it on a USB stick. If we select this game and then choose Game Settings, we see Map Controls. If we go there, we see the controller mapping, and we can edit it here. We start by disabling joystick up and down. Then we leave the others intact until we get to the top button. Now link this button to joystick up. Then we continue until we reach the shoulder button. We make this one the new joystick down. Now we leave the mapping and start Bruce Lee. As you can see, we can now walk from left to right, and he doesn't duck anymore. You can jump with the top button. Oh, wait a minute, let me get rid of this guy first. Okay, so. As you can see, with the shoulder button we can now duck. It takes some getting used to it at first, but it's certainly workable.
Tip number 3.
For tip 3, we stick to the CS stick, because I'm not the only one with this problem. And luckily we have a very active Atari community. They have fully dived into this problem. And a solution was found within a week. This solution was posted directly on the Atari Age forum. I've mentioned this site before. It's a fantastic site, you should definitely visit it. What this Atari Age member discovered is that the shaft of the stick is not held in its place. Therefore he placed a small pad between the stick and the PCB board. And as it turns out, he hasn't had any incorrect registration since then. Of course, I have to try that too. To do this, the joystick must be unscrewed. The screws are located under the rubber feet. These contain enough glue, so they can easily be placed back on later. Now we can unscrew it. Oops, there it goes already. Here we see the PCB. This is attached with two small screws. And he's loose. Here we see the stick, which must be held in place. Then we place the rubber feet in the middle. Now the PCB must fit exactly again. I feel him wobble a little. I think the feet is too thick. I have to cut off a piece of the foot. Now it doesn't wobble anymore. Let's screw it on directly. Before I screw it in completely, I first test it with the Windows controller tester. Now to the left and all the way to the left and to the right. Hey, it seems to work. No longer it detects a down. And the other directions also seem to work normally. That's great! The controller can now be screwed back together. And the feet can go back on. Well, that looks nice again. And now test it with the 400 Mini. So now we can use the built-in Lee game for this again. Yes, it works. No more diving for Bruce Lee. Well, that works nicely. But I have to mention, if you also want to make this modification, it's at your own risk. Opening the joystick may void the warranty. If it later turns out that the modification has led to damage, then this is for your own risk.
Tip number 4.
The next tip is about Atari Basic. If you insert an USB stick in the 400 Mini and go to Media Access, you will see that the 400 Mini has placed the file the 400 Basic there. When you start this, you will get in Atari Basic. Here you can create your own BASIC program. But how can we load existing BASIC programs? The file we just started is actually an Atari DOS disk. So if we enter DOS, we start Atari DOS 2.5. If you then get the directory of the disk, we will indeed see the DOS files. Now I still have all those disks, with the BASIC listings I used to type over or wrote myself. A while ago, I converted all those floppy disks to disk image files with the SIO to PC. I made a video on how you can do that. I put a link to that video in the description. I place one of those disk images on the USB stick. Here we see it, next to the 400 BASIC disk. Now we first select the 400 BASIC disk and then we add the BASIC listing disk to the media set with the shoulder button of the joystick. Then we start BASIC and go to DOS. When we get the directory, we see the contents of the DOS disk. But now we're going to switch disks with the home and the ring down buttons. Now when we get the directory, we see the contents of the listings disk. So we can now load one of the BASIC programs from that disk. This is a game that I apparently once typed from a magazine. I still remember this game. But loading all those listing disks this way is a bit of a hassle. So I created a folder Atari Basic on the USB stick. In here I placed as first disk an Atari DOS disk. Below that are a number of the listing disks. I have given each disk a number, so that I can later see which number is which disk. Then I place this M3U playlist file in the root of the USB stick. When I open it, you see all the disks from the Atari Basic folder. Starting with the DOS disk. The name of the folder has been added to all the files. Now I place the USB stick in the 400 Mini, we see the Atari Basic folder with all the disk files in it. And here we see the Atari Basic playlist file. This is recognizable by the small plus in the icon. We select this file and then go to Game Settings, because we have to make sure that Basic is enabled, otherwise it goes directly to DOS at startup. And if we now start this, we will end up in Atari Basic. If we now go to DOS and get the directory, we will indeed see the contents of the DOS disk. But with the home and ring down buttons, we can select one of the other disks. And then we see the contents of the selected listing disk. To be able to save a program I entered myself, I also placed a file from an empty disk in the folder. So now if we go to Basic and write a Basic program, we can save it to that empty disk. For this we switch to disk 7, the empty disk. Now the file should be on the blank disk. So if we go back to DOS and then get the directory from disk 7, we indeed see our Basic program.
Tip number 5.
In addition to the Atari 8-bit home computer range, the 400 Mini can also play games from the Atari 5200. For this I created an Atari 5200 folder on my USB stick and added a number of 5200 games. When I open the USB stick with my 400 Mini, I see the Atari 5200 folder, but I cannot open it, no matter what I try. This is because the 400 Mini does not recognize the A52 file type, even though it supports Atari 5200 games. But it does recognize the bin file type. So I rename the files to the bin type. Now if I go to the USB drive on the 400 Mini, I can open the Atari 5200 folder. I select the first game, Ball Blazer. Before I start the game, I first go to Game Settings, because the model type must be set first to Atari 5200. Now we can start the game. And it works. Nice game, Ball Blazer. But this doesn't work for every game. Let's try the next game. That's Frogger. We also have to set this game to the 5200 type. This is saved per game, so we only have to do this once per game. Look, this game doesn't start on the 400 Mini. Let's try the next one. That's Hero, and also set this to 5200. Too bad, this doesn't want to start either. Then we try the last one, Pole Position. Look, this one do start. Let's try to play it. Controlling the game is very difficult. That's because the 5200 works with an analog controller. The digital signal of the CX stick is translated in an analog signal by the emulator, but that doesn't work very well. Now we can tweak that conversion a bit in the game settings. I'll just try something for now. We start pole position again. And it's a little better, but still not good. Now it doesn't matter for this game, there is also a good home computer version of it. And other games will be less affected by this effect. And these were my 5 tips for the Atari 400 Mini. I hope it contained some useful information for you. I found the fix of the CX stick to have the most impact. But I continue to be amazed that retrogames released this stick while knowing it has a shortcoming. And then the Atari community throws itself into it and a solution is found within a week. Couldn't anyone at retrogames think of this? Anyway, we've now reached the end of the video. Thanks for watching and please like and subscribe and write some comments. By doing so, you help this channel grow further. For now, I see you at the next video. Bye!